You just got to be careful who's in your tribe. Like, who do you want in your tribe? Are they going to do the job's one thing, but the way you do it is important to me. So, like, I don't want anybody thrown under the bus, and you can make a mistake. I think if people make 3 or 4, it's maybe it's not their fault, it's maybe it's mine. So I think I've got a senior management team around us of 6 people who are, they could do my job, no problem. And I give them enough support and resource, I hope, that they can get on. I just need to be involved in some of the big ticket decisions. So I'll devolve responsibility. I'll take all the accountability. We don't always get it right. But by and large, they're empowered to do what they need to do when they need to do it, which then means that my diary is mostly focused on making sure that they've got everything they need to do the job well.
From Coordinate Sport, it's the Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest this episode is Steve Beharall, head of the Newcastle United FC Foundation. In November, the foundation gets the keys to their new state-of-the-art multi-million-pound facility, Newcastle. The facility sits on the site of the old Murray House and brings multiple influential partners together to engage the community. Steve grew up in the East End of Newcastle and has forged a career that has impacted his community and beyond, working with the club's academy to develop talented players and leading the foundation to develop opportunities for all. During the episode, Steve talks us through his major influences and his career journey, as well as his aspirations for the future of the foundation. Enjoy the show. This episode, I'm really excited to be joined by Steve Beharall, head of the Newcastle United FC Foundation. The foundation are an integral part of the development in the city, providing more than 700,000 hours of provision and working with 60,000 people per year. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hi, James. Pleased to be here.
Yeah, I've known each other for a while. It's great to get you on and kind of hear your take on things at the moment and journey with the foundation. Just to start off, though, what we try and do is give a bit more insight to our listeners and hear kind of your journey to where you are today. So if we go all the way back to your childhood, what would be, if you were going to pick up your earliest sporting memory from growing up in Newcastle, what would that be?
It would be Mr. Bell. We'll probably talk a bit about this, but I spent sort of 10 years working in PE and school sport, aside from sort of professional football coaching at Newcastle United Academy. And for those 10 years, I was based in a sports college, Benfield, in the East End of Newcastle. And the head teacher was a former PE teacher. And he kept going about, Mr. Bell was my favourite PE teacher. He said, he was rubbish. I goes, he wasn't rubbish, man. This PE teacher, basically, he never taught with PE, but he was a deputy head teacher of a small school in the East End of Newcastle. Now, bearing in mind, like, the East End of Newcastle is in like the lowest 0.5% areas of deprivation in the country. Didn't have anything. He didn't know he didn't have anything because everyone had nothing. But he just provided loads of opportunities to play football. So, he had a dog called Tess, did the school choir, so everyone was in the school choir. He was involved in the Cubs, everyone was in the Cubs. You couldn't misbehave at school because you couldn't get all these amazing football opportunities. And he was involved in like Newcastle City Boys. So like back in the day in the 80s and 90s, representing city or your county for football was like pre-academy football. It was like the thing. You just get a lovely little tie and you've got to go to school early on a Wednesday. And he was like the gateway to all of that. So I used to have this conversation with the head teacher at the sports college. So we didn't teach anything. I said, no, but like he just provided so much opportunity. And I would never put a foot wrong in school because I didn't want to upset Mr. Bell.
Does that disappoint me? I didn't want to disappoint him. Yeah.
Didn't want to. Unfortunately, he died a few years ago, and he was probably my best day at school. Was like the day I got to take my swimming trunks and my bag, or you got to do like cross country. I mean, God, you couldn't get away with a safeguard. Now we used to cross country in what would have been 4 and 5. You had to like run from the school, like around the community, through a graveyard, through the Church Walk shopping centre, back to school. And he would stand at the gate with a mug of coffee.
So he just send you off, yeah?
Off you go, lads, aye.
Right.
And like loads of lads would cheat. I'll get dead frustrated because I'd do it properly and loads of lads would cheat and that, and they'd come back and they'd get a clip off Mr. Bell because you just can't do like a mile in like 3 minutes when you're like 7.
So they just did the half loop or something?
Yeah, they went straight back with the games. They weren't messing around. I'd come back lathered in sweat about 10 minutes later. But it was so Mr. Bell that I, like looking back, so I'm involved in non-executive director for the Trust of Schools in the East End of Newcastle now. And it's largely because like he championed that. And that was my best day. And that like I don't think I would have been naughty at school anyway, but I would like had a reason to be on task, on time, have good behaviour. And he had that eye on you. And like there's loads of kids who weren't very good at football, were in the same sort of mold. So I think, and I didn't start playing football really until I was like 8 or 9. My boy started now and he's 5. But that was my earliest memory. And it's become a really important part of why I do what I do now and why I'm on the board of the Neat Academy Trust, just because there'll be other toe rags like me who need to run around, to have to move.
And that's one of the things, I'll probably get into it as well, but that's one of the things where that physical activity or just that outlet of activity or be able to run around and focus on something else does impact the academics as well, doesn't it? Even just the engagement, if someone's not as engaged in the classroom.
Fundamentally, like, I'm not a scientist, but like there's a lot of blood getting pumped in your brain. Like that's not a bad thing, is it? Like that whole blood and oxygen getting pumped in your brain. And there's loads of clever people that tell you about the correlation between physical activity and achievement. In that time, up until 2011, when you had the Sport Trust championing all of the school sports colleges, the majority of those school sports colleges were high performing because they had kids who were doing extra hours of high quality PE and physical education. And like, it's like in life, and if you want anything done, give it to a busy person and they'll get it done. Yeah. So, I spend a lot of time, I'm invested in that. And like every kid I know in a primary school loves to run as fast as they can run. Like they all have a top speed, don't they? And like at some point that gets beat out of you, but they all just like running and chasing each other and it's fun. So I think, I wasn't bad at school, but I didn't care for anything else. But if you let us run around or climb the apparatus or jump in a swimming pool, I came to life. And that was my version. And there'll be other kids whose version might be like making something or designing something or the art or culture. But so that's my earliest memory would be Mr. Bell.
But did you ever get a chance to speak to him about that and like kind of
if I did, no,
let him know like what impact he made on you?
No, he has absolutely no idea. And there'll have been hundreds of kids who came through that school in the East End of Newcastle that he had an influence on because he just provided that structure. Now, he was pretty tough as well. He was like quite an imposing guy.
Yeah.
Big deputy head teacher. So you didn't want to upset him anyway, but he had that carrot and it was football. And like in Newcastle, football's religion. Like there's no other sport. Like a lot of the PE curriculums didn't have any other sport in it. So the only thing looking back where we are now then is like no girls played football then. That wasn't a thing. Didn't exist. And now there's loads of girls playing football. So like more, you could have had that impact on the majority of the school if the girls' football in the
the culture is slightly different. But yeah,
in the 80s, if they had the coach you got now and the role models, that might have been different. But that's actually, as a regret, I never got to have that conversation with him. And he, like I say, unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. Yeah, that was an important sort of part of my growing up.
East End of Newcastle, I guess. In terms of family, was it from a sporty family? I don't know if you got the impact from Mr. Bell at school, but were they kind of pushing you in that? Or?
No, me and my brother were. My brother went on to play professional football for like 15 years. We just kind of fell into it. Nobody in our family was particularly sporty at all. There wasn't much in the area. You had to take every opportunity you had to take. So my mum, like, you weren't allowed to not do something. So then I had to play violin from like year 2 because it was like a free thing to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was clarinet.
There you go, right? So like I just
until as soon as I could not do it anymore, that was my thing. Yeah.
I'm with you. So I had to play that until what would have been like year 8.
Yeah.
And like I was the kid who had to walk to school with a violin case. So like
exactly that. Yeah,
I learned how to be funny and fast because we wouldn't survive in the East End Newcastle carrying a violin case. I had this massive target on my back. But you had to do it and you weren't allowed to not do it anymore. Like I have a real reason to like give something up. And you know what? If you sort of do that alongside football, because I didn't want to do it, I had a real resentment for music. And I love music now. But at the time, I absolutely hated music because it was just something that I had to go to the city orchestra on a Saturday morning, which meant I couldn't play football. Like I got bullied for it. Nothing major, but like, if you find something to pick on or someone at school, like you'll pick on it. So, but football was the opposite. Like I would have done anything for football. So no, it was me and my brother was sporty. I've got an older sister and my mum and dad. But that was the other interesting thing about my career. So for, since '99, I've been employed by Newcastle United. And my brother came through that as a footballer. So we both had a different relationship with the club, and that we're employed by the club. We never came from a family that used to take us to the game.
That was going to be one of my questions, because when I asked about your first memory, I don't know if you're going to say, growing up on the Gallagher end and then going to games every Saturday and stuff. That wasn't the case for you then. Obviously a fan, but
wasn't the case. But no, you know what? I played football. I represent the city. I was in that system, that centre of excellence system. I got as far as like a 2-week trial. When Colin Suggett was youth team manager and Ozzy Ordelis was the manager. That's how long ago that was, and that didn't work out. And then I left for university at 18, largely because I didn't want to live in the East End of the city anymore. And I kind of went to college, and my tutor went, well, you can go through clearing with those grades. Within 2 weeks, I was living in Sheffield.
Because would you go to the Navy first then? Or?
I had no plan. I ended up in Newcastle College doing a BTEC, and then I signed up for the Navy. And on the same week, my tutor at the college said, well, look, you can go through this thing called clearing. You can get university with your grades. And this was when it was a free hit. You didn't pay for uni. So this was 94. So within 2 weeks, I was at uni. And that's when I realised that I missed Newcastle. And it was the start of the Premier League, that whole, the Premier League was kicking off. We were brilliant, the entertainers. So that's when you go, bloody hell, what an amazing place I'm from. And that football team, and I love football. And that's really inspiring as well. So I kind of had to miss it a bit to fall in love with it. So I was kind of 18 years behind everyone else in terms of being a fan. But I never got the access. We're never the family that would go to watch football matches.
So with go to uni, sports management at Sheffield Hallam, when you went to, was the foundation around at that point then? You finished uni, was it just starting out, or was there anything like a football in the community type thing going on back then?
Well, this is kind of I've done full circle here. So on my second year, you got to find like a 12-week unpaid placement, and it was football in the community back in those days, and I applied to give my services 12 weeks for free, and they wouldn't take us. So the football community ended up in 20 that sort of died a death, and then 13 years ago the foundation was created as a new charity. So they're completely different organisations, but they are both the club's commitment to community engagement. So I couldn't get in football in the community; they wouldn't take us for 12 weeks for free. So that's kind of that's done a full circle. At Newcastle City Council, they had a football development scheme, they had a cricket development scheme and a football development scheme. And that was one of the best learning environments I've ever been in. And some of the people who've gone on from that are working now in the professional game, at Premier League level.
Because this is back then, I guess, I'd say heyday of sports development. A lot of big sport development teams in the councils and stuff. I know it's not so much. You don't really find that, do you, in terms of local councils?
The councils took on the responsibility at that point. I think what happened over time was that they realised that was the national governing body's responsibility to develop talent and participation. Budgets were starting to get squeezed as early as 2006, 2007. So there was a very different focus in terms of what a local authority should provide. But we were talking about this, funny enough, just the other week, that in '94 there was no internet. Like, the internet came around in my university. It's like we've lived through this digital revolution. I remember being in my third year at uni going, that'll never take off. There's like a massive queue to use this computer, and I did my dissertation with a book. There's no copy and paste. Just think, I don't know how it was even possible, looking at how much we're dependent on digital.
I used to have what was it, when I was probably maybe a few years behind you when I was in school. I remember having the CDs, Encarta CDs. If you wanted to look for something, you have to put the CD in and check it. And then I remember someone explaining Google to me what it was.
Yeah,
I was like, I didn't get it first time, but
I was Ask Jeeves. That's how far ahead I was.
Ask Jeeves,
when you Google search, you couldn't Google things. You search the information superhighway and all that. Yeah. So I did a 12-week placement, but they got us qualified. It was the old FA prelim then, which would be a level 2 now. And over that 12 weeks, I just realised that actually I just liked helping people. And I got some balls and I got some kit, and I thought, this is amazing. And hourly rate was £10.50 an hour, which was unbelievable. I was working at Iceland at the minute, and I wasn't getting anything near that. So it was like, oh my God, this could be amazing. I remember the first session I got sent to, I went with 16 footballs, and my community tour rags nicked 3 of them. So 3 of them, I was absolutely bricking it to go back to the football development officer and say, look, I've already lost 3 balls. Knocked on his door, went in. I've lost 3 balls. He says, well, what do you think they're going to be doing with them? Playing football? Well, that's my job. He says, I'd be more worried if they were stealing cricket bats and javelins and that. Yeah. So he was really kind. But that's when it kind of, I realised that's what I wanted to do. And I finished uni, give us a job. and it kind of kicked on from there. So really the best part of my whole degree was that 12-week experience. And I think if you look at it now, if I've been connected to, white van man with no procedure, I don't want to dig anyone out here, but my job I got a placement with somebody really inexperienced who just needed a dog's body to do the work with no real thought or quals. Like that might be a different journey now, but at the very beginning, I managed to hook on to some people who've become really like inspirational and like just brilliant at community engagement.
Well, I guess that's a stigma now, like the kind of white van man's type scenario. But I guess back then there wasn't really any minimum standards and stuff, was there? But it's down to the integrity of the actual individuals, isn't it, to make sure that.
Absolutely. I think we, and like at Newcastle United Foundation, if we're anything first, we're safe. Like we champion safeguard and we talk about it all the time. Our staff need to know what is in their job to keep them safe, keep young people safe. The amount of training we do, the resource and people have ploughed into it, it's, we have to be because we carry the club's brand and we do a lot of work which is quite risky in terms of vulnerable adults and young people. And you think back to the olden days, there was no DBS checks. We know what's happened in terms of sport and the voluntary sector in terms of sort of how people have abused those positions. But we were just really lucky that we had a group of coaches and sports development officers who had loads of integrity, were from the place, so really cared about the places that we worked and were really connected in those places. And what came from that was just this environment of learning and sharing and coaching each other, because you couldn't jump on the internet to search stuff out. You just had to get your boots on the ground and work with people and then just, teaching and learning and coaching, just take the best ideas, but you've got to be able to create them as your own. I can't take what James said and do it how James did it. I've got to find a way to bring that life. And I think we had a training week last weekend, the 6th, with all of our staff. So we've got about 120 full-time staff now at Newcastle United Foundation. And realistically, we just appoint inspirational people. We need people to have qualifications to be compliant, but we want personalities and we want people with lived experience. And
that's the stuff you can't train, right? Like
absolutely, James. I do a lot of work at Newcastle University with Newcastle College, and I want to speak to young people who are young carers. I want to speak to young people who can speak 2-3 languages. I want to speak to people who've had some real experiences in their life. And all of those skills are far more transferable in terms of inspiring and motivating and connecting with people than a qual. I'm not dumbing down any qualifications, but essentially what we do is our product is our ability to connect with somebody and find out where they've been, where they're going, how we can help. That's it. We're not making products, we're not building stuff. And to do that, you've got to have like all of these other set of skills that you can sort of lean on.
Yeah, you're right. Well, obviously the badge is going to get you so far and open, get the doors open, but then that actually when you're going on the ground and you're delivering the programs, it's probably a good time to look at, I guess, the breadth of programs or the scope of the foundation now. You're working across so many different areas, schools, different projects. You've got soccer schools and
yeah. Well, effectively, what do? We help people be more healthy, be more active, to learn, to realise their potential, get qualifications. And the work we do, although we work with lots and lots of people, the most valuable work we do is more targeted work around behaviour, around I say a cohort of secondary age students who school isn't for them. Home life isn't very good. Where do they go? And you look at, last 2 years, there's been £121 million stripped out of youth services budgets across the country. What happens to those kids who their social mobility was already going to, because they haven't got that support of school and home, was already going to be a challenge. And now you look on the back of COVID, like what about that cohort? So the likes of us, Prince's Trust, some of our local youth services are coming together to try and provide those sort of opportunities. So I think that's the type of niche work that we do really well. But essentially, we've got 4 departments. Obviously, we do a lot of football stuff. We don't do elite boy stuff. That's the club. We do a lot of elite girl stuff because Newcastle United Women sits with us, a trading company of Newcastle United Foundation, a subsidiary company. We've got a community programme which provides lots of interventions outside of statutory time, free to access, self-improvement programmes, stuff like National Citizen Service, that type of activity. We've got an education system where I think last year we were like over 250 schools across 140 community hubs across 4 local authority areas. And then we've got a health and wellbeing department, which really is about promoting positive mental health, reducing stigmas, and extending healthy life. So I suppose a good example is Bob is one of our Walk Football guys, one of our 294 people, mostly men, but there's a growing cohort of women who, until he was doing our Walk Football program, hadn't played football for 25 years. He's now apparently scored his 2000th goal, which he's had a trophy for. No one's been able to qualify whether that's
doing the stats on that.
But you know, as James, he attends 4 times a week now. We developed that program to get older people more active and less socially isolated. He didn't sign up for that. He signed up because he loves the tune, and his family couldn't get him to do anything. And what's also happened is he's got a small network now of, you know, the unregistered volunteering where you go, James, I'm going to the shops to get your milk, but you've been out. I'll go with you to walk and football. Like that small network of people.
Like peer support kind of it, yeah.
Absolutely. I know he didn't sign up for any of that. He signed up because he was interested in that Newcastle United were doing something for free outside his house. So I think all of our programs have those type of outcomes. We've just recently appointed an insights and impact manager who's doing more work around theory of change and us being able to actually put our finger on the outcomes we're delivering across the community. So I think that's where we are as a foundation, sort of 13 years on. We want to be able to tell the story in a bit more detail in terms of the type of interventions, why we assume they're going to work and whether they do or they don't.
I mean, I've got a couple of follow-ups on that because there's so much work and we'll look at kind of the challenges of that. But I want to, if we just go back a little bit to your journey into the position you're in now, I guess through the foundation. So were you there at the very start of the foundation?
Yeah, my predecessor, Kate Bradley, she is really, her legacy is where we are now. So she started in, don't want to get 13 years ago, that's how good my maths is. So 13 years ago from this year, she set up the foundation. So I think Sir John Hall, who was used to own Newcastle United, gave the club a cheque for £50,000, and she started with £50,000 and 2.5 people. I took over from Kate in 2019 and we were up to nearly 100 staff. And I think it was a £3 million turnover at that point. So like all of that growth was Kate and the club in terms of, and on that journey, she had to be at different times head of HR, head of finance, head of program delivery.
It's almost like a business startup, and
she did that. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and say I could do that. I came in 2016 when the foundation and club started to talk about this community building, and we'll get to that later. So it'd been a plan, but Kate needed time to get on with the funds and creating that opportunity for the community. So I came in as an operations manager in August or September 2016. And that was really to do a few things. Make sure all of our programs were safe and the staff were safe and the brand was safe in terms of the type of activities we do. Work out if we were any good at any of it and how we would be better. And then hopefully, grow parts of the business plan that we need to grow to go from X million to X million. So that included programs and different departments and people. And if it did all of that, I think that the other part of the job, which was never written down, was actually if we do all that, the club will get some credit somewhere for doing something in the community that is other than a result in the Premier League or the Championship. So I kind of came in with that, and I was always very honest that I wanted to, at some point, have the role I've got now. Careful what you wish for, taking those roles on before the pandemic.
I was going to say, because I know you were interim for a while, and then officially got the role in February 2020, just before the pandemic started.
Yeah, it was good timing, wasn't it? So
yeah.
Good time. Yeah. So up until I've never known anything different than, in terms of, and I suppose the only difference now is senior management team around us who have the skills that we need to be successful. I'm not my predecessor. I've got different skills, and so we need to make sure that any gaps that she left were filled with people who I could work with, and we've got that. And and then we had COVID, didn't we? But COVID has given us a chance to demonstrate to our local community that we're more than football. I think there's always been a thought that we just deliver football when it's probably 15% of our programs and interventions. So it's given us a chance to really respond to community need. Did lots and lots of work with schools around covering staff, around free school meals, vouchers and pack lunches, and working with other sort of third sector organisations who've sort of absolutely stepped up during the last 18 months. So I suppose I moved into this role at a stage when we've kind of found the rest of the funding for the building, demolish an old site, build something new, get the keys in a few weeks' time. And then I suppose the way I would explain it is whether it's the new version of the old foundation, where we've got our own building, stand our own 2 feet, we're not dependent on being in St James's Park. So it opens the gate to the next version of what we want to be and how we want to support the community.
I'm interested in, I guess, the funding model. Like you said, they had the business plan to take it forward 2016, 17 and increase the revenue. But in terms of the funding model, totally independent from the club. But what does that look like? Is in terms of being in the third sector? Is it grants, or are you running like a business, generating your own revenue, trying to be sustainable? That
we've got a blended model, really. I think we get so much in-kind support from Newcastle United that if we couldn't actually put a pound sign on it, but it would be hundreds of thousands of pounds every year. I mean, I don't know how you put I don't know how you put a price on access to the club's brand, their IP. I mean, that alone is...
So yeah, a lawyer will be able to tell us how much that's worth.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely, yeah. So answer about a postcard for that one. But obviously all the head office costs, they support us with payroll, HR, finance, safeguarding, equality, diversity, inclusion. They've advised in terms of our build. Yeah, so we get all of that support, and they were crucial in supporting us in the funding appeal. People like Premier League, Football Foundation, and other public, private and voluntary sector organisations. So we've had to walk through the door ourselves, but if the club didn't want us to do this, we would never have started this journey. And in terms of how we operate as a business, we've got a blended model. Probably 50% of our income comes from grants, so then we've got fees, sales, and a small part which is fundraising and donations. So we've got a business plan around how much earned and raised money funding we want to get to. I want to get a sort of 50-50 split, and we were on track for that post-COVID. But then there have been a number of short-term grants available through COVID funding, which has sort of skewed that a bit. So we're now more dependent on grants based on the fact that they were available, and it was the right thing to do to access some of those to then deploy back into the community. Yeah, we have a separate business plan. We're in the second year of a 3-year business plan, which is focused on not necessarily growing programs and people, but internally. So on our systems, on our inclusion strategy, and having systems that help us understand all of our data and understand our customers better. So I think in this phase includes the move to our new building. So there's this academic year is probably the riskiest and the busiest the foundation's had in its 13-year history, because we've got all of this move, the culture, the systems, also involve us work with an extra 100,000 people a year, a new department, new staff, while still continuing to do all of the work that we do across the community. So we can't let this building take away from what we already do. We can't sort of take from Peter to feed Paul. We need to still have a lot of community activities where it's needed around the community, but we also need to have a plan that means that we can afford to pay the bills in our new building. So
sure, yeah. I mean, look on the new building. It's probably good to have a look at the vision for that. So that's going back, you said 5 or 6 years when the first idea of this new facility was born. And we just talked off the recording. It's literally right next door to the ground, right?
Just over the road from St James's Park. Yeah. So I've got some really iconic. People have a look on. We have a YouTube channel, Newcastle United Foundation, and it's got a lot of our video case studies, but it's got a number of videos around the building. So pre-demolition of the old Murray House site, the creation and development of Newcastle. So it's a goal kick away from St James's Park, and this could have been built anywhere in the city, and we probably could have built something that was bigger and cheaper elsewhere, but we want to be connected to St James's Park. We want to be city centre, and we're on a corner of the city which really needs some support in terms of the demographics wrapped around that building, in terms of the number of people accessing universal credit, the number of young people who are living in poverty, and lots of health inequalities. So this building has to give us permission for that, particularly that community, to access the foundation and access services. Because currently, James, that like St James's Park is a very corporate world. If you want to get closer to a job or a qualification or need some help or mentoring, you would never really walk into St James's Park.
A bit intimidating, right? Just
If you're confident, like we've got a lot of people on our programs who, their body language, they can't even make eye contact with you. They've lived quite a chaotic life, and the only part of our community that we work with, every part of our community. The youngest participant's 4 and the oldest is 93. So there's an offer there for everyone, but I don't think you would necessarily walk into St James's Park, up the elevator on the second floor, past stadium tours, and then knock on our door. There's too many barriers there. We need,
especially with what it means to people as well, if they're like super fans and stuff, and it's a big deal, right? Just to walk
exactly. In. And I mean, like football stadiums are maximum security. You can't just wander. Exactly. You can't just wander around. So I think this hopefully gives the community permission to access the building and come and talk to about the type of programs we provide.
So facility-wise, I know obviously heavily sport focused. I'm going to touch on the kind of STEM and the surrounding campus, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But in the building, then, what's the kind of range of facilities in there?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because it's given us a permission to do some different type of work. So we've got a significant grant from the North of Tyne Combined Authority, which is Newcastle Local Authority, North Tyneside and Northumberland County Council, where they have invested in the building to do a huge programme around careers and future work. So we were already doing a lot of work with young people, employment programmes. So this has meant that we've almost trebled that programme. So we're targeting to work with 180 businesses this year. We already work with 150. And a lot of that is around young people 11 to 16, knowing what career options are in the north of Tyne. So, we've got British Volt, who are leading the way in terms of battery production in the country. You've got Port Blythe, which is leading the way in terms of wind turbines. Got digital startups in Ousburn. There's there's loads of opportunities in the northeast. So we are working towards specific sectors across digital, construction, hospitality, services, and health services, where we are sort of trying to, because we've got no skin in the game, right? We're not an employer. We're not a college or a school. We can kind of be removed from that and think about destinations and what that path might look like for young people.
Because traditionally, like obviously going back, it'd be the kind of shipyards or whatever it be. In terms of, I guess, the focus of education in the area, that's where the jobs are, right? So that's where we're pushing. But now you bring in all the new industries in.
Yeah, so STEM and digital is huge as well. I mean, the reality is we don't know what the future jobs are going to be. But this is effectively, it's about a more dynamic and inclusive economy. Sort of narrow the inequalities and promote more social mobility and equip young people in the north of Tyne with the knowledge, skills, ambition to pursue a career in those growth industries. So we're talking about apprenticeships, traineeships, Kickstart programs. We're working with Newcastle College as a learning provider. So I think we want to support businesses to recruit skilled and motivated workforce, but then provide extra support to those who are disadvantaged or disengaged young people. So we are doubling our efforts with those who are sort of 17 plus and who have no destination on in qualifications. So that neat cohort, but we're doing more and more work, tend to identify those who by the end of year 11 might not have any destination.
Right, so you could proactively, so I guess identifying them before they drop into that neat.
Yeah, we are. I think
that neat position.
Yeah, and the building, so the building will have a STEM room. Is going to be really exciting. We've got investment, a number of sort of virtual reality devices. So we're starting to now work with some of those big companies around virtual reality and employment engagement. So all Catapult, we're not going to be able to take kids out on a wind farm to have a look around, but we can design that. So working with Sunderland Software City to design all of the digital. We're going to go out to tender in terms of developing all of that program. So it needs to be really engaging, dynamic way where we use innovation and technology to provide a new approach to careers and skills. And all of this is 11,000 young people a year. We'll work with 5,000 around the Gatsby standards. So we'll have at least 4 interactions with them at Newcastle, but then in Northumberland and satellite centres in North Tyneside. So I think what the club also has is access to high profile employers. People want to engage. So that's just one programme that we've been able to develop and extend because of the building. We've just launched in September the first esports qualification in the Northeast with Newcastle College. That's sort of tied into the British Esports Association. So, those people who want careers in gaming or digital, it's a stepping stone to be able to do that. So we've just recruited 60 learners onto that programme. So again, with the college on that, the club actually has a professional esports FIFA player. Every second or third email the club gets is around people in the community want to be part. How do they apply to do that? Well, actually, there's a pathway into that now in terms of our esports offer, but we're also launching a free digital and esports community offer for anybody in the community to come and get involved in evenings and weekends. So we would never have thought about things like esports, but we've got a bespoke esports room within this building, which is really exciting, and the speed at which people have signed up for that feels like that's going to be a bit of a growth area for us.
And for you working with the young people as well, because you've got your finger on the pulse for those future careers, you're getting the young people in, so if you can kind of help mould or shape what they're decisions are as we move forward.
Yeah, but I think we've got interest. Say the brand is a bit of a hook. Well, it is a hook, isn't it? It's a hook to engage. And then it kind of, my experience is people get interested and curious about what a football club might do. So we've got to be humble with that in terms of, like, honestly, nobody works for Newcastle United Foundation with a massive ego. Tend to get turned around pretty quickly. They're a pretty humble group of people who are just really focused on trying to help people. So we use that inspirational, like, coach, teacher, resource, and we use, like, Newcastle United as a real life business case study. So I suppose if you look at a professional football club and all of the departments within it, business development to commercial to maintenance to ground staff to cleaning to hospitality, we're using that as a real life business case. And then we network with other industries and partners to try and do different iterations of that. So yeah, we're working with got an interesting partnership with Ryder Architects, who designed Newcastle, but who've, are dead keen to get local talent through. But when you look at the entry level, like, to get somebody like me from the East End of Walker, like, I wouldn't have had the quals or the experience to be able to apply for that sort of job. So they are looking at how they might make their programs more accessible through Gateshead College and Newcastle College, so that young people with a talent and a passion can find their way into these really worthwhile jobs in the northeast of Newcastle.
I mean, it feels like the facility is bringing, obviously you're doing that work, partnership work before this, but it feels like even more so this facility is bringing a lot more, bringing everyone together around the kind of shared vision.
Yeah. The balance I've got to get right, James, is, like, all of our programs have physical activity attached to them. That's what we do. We encourage people to move more, and the people who get to move more are mostly the people who haven't moved a lot for a long time. So that whole Sport England plan around getting people who are sort of relatively active, more active. We can engage with the ones who haven't been active, the Bobs who haven't been active for 25 years, and find a way for them to get back into physical activity. The bit I've got to be careful with around certainly our growth around new futures and all the careers and skills is that we still want to champion all that. We still want young people to move. We still want to inspire them to move. That's the 700,000 hours of physical activity we contribute every year.
Can they come down to the Newcastle facility to do that? So programs, are they running out of there? So
So when you come up for your visit, we've got the ground floor is this physical activity. So it's a standard forecourt badminton hall, a separate physical activity suite, but it's not going to be the type that has loads of static strength machines in, because the people who access our programs are it's like behavior change programs for some of them, and it's people who are. So we looked at, like, working with the local NHS around trips and falls. But what we found is, like, on walking football, Cass University did a study on mobility and strength in older people whilst taking part in walking football, because it's not like linear movement. You're kicking, you're moving, and everything else. So we found actually what we're really doing is extending healthy life rather than getting to that point where people have had trips and falls and then trying to find interventions. So our physical activity space is a space, and we'll just be creative with it. We've got a commercial room, which is around spinning, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. If you used to go to the disco in the late 90s with the strobes, it's that kind of setup. It's going to be pretty engaging, and some of it will be virtual. The first floor is like our staff room and our head office and all our classrooms, STEM room, esports room, and learning labs. And then we've got a brand new sort of state-of-the-art turf on the roof, which is open to the elements, where you can see St James's Park from. It's a really amazing space in the city where you can sort of see across the east to west, but you can almost peer into St James's Park. So I think anybody who comes to do a learning or skills program at our place we'll be encouraging them to do something fun, which involves sort of moving.
Yeah, quite helps to get inspired. I mean, in terms of stats on that, 5 or 6 years to raise the funding. What was the kind of the level of funding you need to raise? I know it must have been a huge undertaking.
It was in the millions. Yeah. So I think we had 3 plans. One was 8-court hall and a full-size AstroTurf pitch. And the only reason we didn't go for that was we just couldn't fit it on the site. So the site itself, it's interesting and sad that in terms of we built on the site of the old Murray House. And the Murray House was built in 1937 at the time when they had the decline of shipyards. So we talked about coal mining and shipyards, and like lots of villages in the northeast were built to service that industry. In 1937, when the shipyards were in decline, the Admiralty invested in a number of Murray houses across the northeast, and it was mostly to get young men physically active, give them something productive to do, and give them some skills and qualifications. Now, if you look, like almost 90% years
Like
in
kind of
advance.
full circle, right? Yeah.
Right back, James, we're right back there, so unfortunately. So that building, the 80s, was the leading youth service, youth club in the Northeast. Huge support from the community. And over the years, it just kind of fell into decline. We consulted with 3 of the women who would give 40 years to Murray House. And we've continued to consult with them in terms of what the Newcastle needs to be. So we took on a land that had a covenant, which was around physical activity and around skills. So that's why we're built there. So we were limited in terms of the size and scale that we could build something. But it's effectively, we've had support from public, private and voluntary sector. So North of Tyne Combined Authority and the Football Foundation were huge investors in terms of millions of pounds. But then we've had the North East LEP, we've had people like the Rees Foundation, McCardle family, Newcastle College, UEFA have been involved. We've got partners like Lion Trust, Graham Wiley Foundation have all contributed in donating and granting us some capital. And what we've also done, we've managed to invest some capital and revenue. So what we've kind of learned from these sort of capital bills in the past is you go to all your friends and you make some new friends and you ask them for some capital, and then you build a building. You can't really go back because you've just asked them for a significant amount of investment. So we've all along the way, we've asked for capital and revenue. So it's been a combination of, we found more public, private, voluntary sector partners. But so I would say probably half of them will give us a capital investment and some revenue for the first year or so to make sure we can deliver some of these programs really well. So I think, Rees Foundation, Sage are a big partner, Newcastle Building Society are a 6-year community partner.
Yeah.
And they've really seen the benefit in terms of us linking with the corporate world. They named the building. So, it's Newcastle, powered by Newcastle Building Society. We've done so much work around employability. We're talking about secondments, they're providing secondments to us sort of next year in terms of 6 months secondments from some of their staff. So, it's been a long journey, but we've been fortunate enough that we haven't built something that's going to really stretch us. So, I really do wonder how some other football club CCOs have managed to survive COVID with huge buildings and maybe not being able to qualify for sort of rate reliefs and no activity. That could really push you over a cliff. Yeah, and fortunately, it feels like we're coming out of it. So it didn't really hold up the building phase. Robertsons have been amazing in terms of getting ahead of the curve, kind of pre-COVID, and then sort of slightly different dispensation around COVID for construction when it was open. So building has been. We've talked about this for 5 years, and then we're finally going to get the keys on the 22nd of November. So it's really exciting. We'll open it to the public in March 2022. And hopefully we've got somebody significant going to come and open it for us. So just till that's signed off, I can't really.
Yeah, no, it's. It just feels like it's a great fit, especially explaining about what the site was previously used for. So it's definitely fit. I'm really interested in terms of. I know this is your main challenge over the last few years. Obviously, we've got COVID and things like that. But on a kind of day-to-day recurring level, what type of operational challenges do you? I know you came in as an operations manager. But what's kind of the running theme of challenges you're having to deal with?
So honestly, it's staff, and I would say
you've got what was it? 100? They said 120 staff.
Up 120 now, and 60 sessional staff.
Most of them off site as well, I guess. All out.
Yeah. And that's not a criticism of our staff. So I'll qualify that by saying my focus on how I lead the organisation is really based on that servant leadership model, where I need to resource our frontline staff as our number one customer. So the people out there with bags, balls, cones, in the kit, in the classroom, mentoring young people, they need to have all the full support, do their job well, fully resourced, and be on this mission with us. So we've done a lot of work around our vision, our themes of work, and I've managed to put that on a page. And then we've managed to work with staff around how their job would contribute to each of those themes so that everyone's working towards our mission and our vision. So if I can resource them and champion them and give them the high fives and sort of give them a bit of a shake when they need it, they'll deliver the best service they can to our number 2 customers, who are young people, service users. What we tend to find is they become your marketing and comms, and they tell the world. So I think, now to caveat that, the challenge, I think my role is 2 things now. If my old job was be safe, be quality, grow the business, this is find the opportunities, find the problems. That's and be accountable to the board. So there's been loads and loads of problems on the back of COVID. And I think as a responsible employer, some of those problems don't exist in the workplace, but we've got a welfare plan for staff and we take it seriously. So I think we've found ourselves, and certainly Katie, our lead person on HR, find yourself involved in lots of conversations which aren't work related or might manifest itself in work, but it could be anywhere. I think over the last 18 months,
You probably wouldn't have paid attention to, not paid attention. You probably wouldn't have analysed them as much, would you? I guess those conversations before COVID.
I think post-COVID, 18 months on, people have realised there's more to life than work. Some people have lost people. Some people have lost a lot of stuff. Even more so where we're trying to connect purpose to our work so that people are inspired and they are whistling to work as many days as they possibly can. Part of that culture that the staff have created, so I spoke about this last week at our staff training, the culture's theirs. I can nudge it, but I can't create it. I can't buy an office puppy and change it. I can't put a ping pong table in and change it. It's their standards, their teamwork, their commitment, their empathy that drives our culture forward. But the rub with that is if you're going to talk about it, you've got to be about it. So we find ourselves in lots of conversations where people are really struggling. They're struggling coming back to work, and the scale of work that now exists, which is probably 15% more than it was before. The number of funders and applications and work we have to do to sort of chase our tail in terms of that CAM we've been kicking down the street in terms of funding and grants. And we've got to deliver it. We've protected it. It's got to be done now. And so you find yourself having conversations with people where, coming out of COVID, my assumption was people would be pleased to be back. And that's just not the way the world works. The past's the past. So what now? It's we're here. And the here is more hours, more work, more to do. So if I'm honest with you, my reality is that staff are the biggest challenge in terms of supporting them and challenging them. And it's not in the majority, but that's a reality of where we are as an organisation. But I'm confident that we've got 30-40% of our workforce are champions anyway. So in time, they'll pull themselves around. And the other risk we've got is we've took on 27 staff. And whilst my view is that will bring loads more enthusiasm, inspiration, commitment, different ways to work, there's also a huge risk attached to that as well, that a quarter of our staff are new. So, that's the bit that probably takes the most time and takes more time than it did pre-COVID.
Yeah. How do you go about structuring your day as a leader? So much to do, talking about all the programs, everything that's happening. Do you have a set routine every day that this is or if you were going to think, right, let me kind of my best ever day, what would it look like?
I think, yeah. Well, the first thing is, I'm not a micromanager, but there's people in my senior management team who are. So when I go back to the conversation we had before about the skills you need around you. So I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, who's sort of someone away from work who's another leader. And she said, you just got to be careful who's in your tribe. Who do you want in your tribe? Are they going to do the job's one thing, but the way you do it is important to me. So I don't want anybody thrown under the bus and you can make a mistake. I think if people make 3 or 4, maybe it's not their fault, it's maybe it's mine. So I think I've got a senior management team around us of 6 people who are, they could do my job, no problem. And I give them enough support and resource, I hope, that they can get on. I just need to be involved in some of the big ticket decisions. So I'll devolve responsibility. I'll take all the accountability. We don't always get it right. But by and large, they're empowered to do what they need to do when they need to do it, which then means that my diary is mostly focused on making sure that they've got everything they need to do the job well. The risk with that is I'm so far removed from the front line now that I think that's a real risk. So in terms of the staff we've recruited, I haven't been involved in any of that, but that's the responsibility I've had to pass over. And I think there's a type of person we want, and I've just got to have confidence that people I've worked with know the type of people we're after in terms of that, all those transferable skills, the empathy, their experience, their personal life, their ambition. So I think that's the one thing I've missed, and what I've tried to do is protect some time to be around. That's the bit that really inspires us. If you go back to Mr. Bell at the beginning of this, I want to be an iteration of him. Now, I made a decision in 2016 I had this opportunity to come to the foundation as operations manager or go to Newcastle United Academy full time. I've been there since the academy since 1999, working part time, sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, Saturday morning, all day Sunday. And at some point, that's got to come to an end. And I came to the foundation because I thought I could do more of the Mr. Bell type of activity. So I tried to remind myself of that. I tried to be around some of the frontline delivery because basically I just want to be inspired. And I get that from our staff and young people. Absolutely not about me, but I have to be able to dip into that. So I think if I become too far removed from it, I'll forget that I'm a football coach, really.
And I guess it's draining as well, isn't it? Like you were saying before, you didn't get into it to be writing certain policies or being doing those roles that you do have to do in your position now. But yeah, it can take the energy out of you. I
think at the top of my working week, the one thing that I protect every week is me coaching on a Friday night. So I still coach at Newcastle United Academy on a Friday night. I do an hour and a half, sometimes 5 to 6:30, or do 2 sessions 5 to 8. So the lads who've identified who might be close to academy football, but they need to come to a development centre. And because I've been at the academy for that long, I've kind of got an idea of what the standard is. So, but I leave work at 4, I drive to the academy, and then by 6:30, I'm a happy man. I go home happy every Friday because there's just some kids I've tried to give them a really fun, interesting learning experience with a ball rolling around. So I think if I didn't have that, my Friday would become Saturday, Sunday, back into Monday. So I've
so that's kind of sets the tone for your weekend, gives you that decompression.
Yeah, and I think I plan it that way, but I know that's what I get out of it. So like if I'm honest, it's 50% for the kids, it's 50% for me. But I think me enjoying coaching, I'll hopefully provide a good opportunity for the lads who are there, and I kind of keeps us out the pub a couple of hours as well on the Friday night. And I'm happy when I get home, and I feel like I've started a weekend. So, and I've also realised people have got a contract where it's 35 or 40 hours a week, and I want people to do their job in 35 or 40 hours. I don't want them to do it in 50 or 60.
Yeah.
That's not realistic sometimes when you're leading an organisation, but that's the job, and that's what we need to be able to do. I'm not expecting anyone to do 60 or 70 hours a week, and that's not the job. If that's the case, we need to have a look at what you're doing and how you're doing it. So I think there's a few fundamentals there, and I think if people enjoy their work, like that's absolutely crucial and significant. And I think that comes back to the culture that the staff create, and creating this new building, Newcastle, and the fact that we haven't been together for so long, getting people back together and connecting with each other is going to be a key part of sort of pulling us back through COVID and back to this new version of the old foundation, the type of activities we need to do. So I think I could spend all week with staff, but the reality is that you can't run a business like that. So I think I've got to try and protect some of that, but absolutely trust the people across the senior management team and the guys to fully resource those guys, the staff who are front line. And if we're not about that, we can't be about anything else, because that's the secret success, is that James, who's out there in the classroom, feels empowered. And you know what you also get with that? You don't get like when there's an issue, or speak to my boss, or that's not our policy, they just fix it.
Yeah.
They try and go, no, but this is why, or can I help you else? Or you get a totally different service, and then people feel like they've got some ownership for where we're going, and they take real pride in it. So that's what we're trying to be about. And the thing about my week is it's so varied, like really varied. Every week is completely different, other than some of the meetings that I have to attend with my team. Like it could be anything every week. So it's a really privileged position to be in terms of representing the club across the community.
On that comms piece, you have those regular meetings with your team. You've got that anchor on the Friday evening. In terms of the team and the senior manager, how does that? Is that you in touch with them daily, or do you have just a one weekly Zoom meeting, or how do you tend to? Well,
COVID's been interesting because we've been flexible, and for some of the team, we'll continue to be. So, like Helen, our head of finance, doesn't need to be in the building every day. She get all the forecasts she needs to do, and all the management accounts can be done anywhere. I mean, I'm desperate to get her away from the comp, because like otherwise she could do that anywhere in the world. It's just a metric, but actually getting in front of our young people and seeing the programs is key. And she does do that, her and her team. We meet on a weekly basis, and then we'll meet as a team every fortnight. We're just reviewing this at the minute. We'll have every fortnight, there's either a strategic or an operations meeting.
So kind of getting out of the business, or out of the organisation.
And it's harder to do then it's more difficult now, James, because with the building coming, we've got far more operational tasks than we've ever had.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we just need to spend some away days a couple of times a year to think about actually what happens beyond the cycle of this business plan when we get to 2023. What's the ambition, and how might it change? Because there's so much to do. But I also feel like if we're just plan, do, we just become busy fools. Like we've got to be able to zoom out of it and go, hold on a sec, let's just take a minute to see if any of this is even working, or are we just working hard? That's not like my job is to work in the business, and sometimes as a senior management team we're working in the business too much, and that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to work on the business. So I think we've got we're a relatively new senior management team in terms of been together, some of us 5 years, but the rest, half of the senior management team, been with us for 2 years, been in the business longer. But we're just constantly trying to work out what type of team we need to be. That'll change around if there's something compliance that just needs to be done. We are I'll be command. If it's actually that we need to work through some of the detail around the procedure for the new building, then we'll need to be a different sort of team. So we're committed to it, and it's my responsibility to look after the training and leadership of that group. Otherwise, it could just become anything. So yeah, that's how we do it. There's a lot of autonomy, but you know what it is? Like, we do a good job. Like, I don't
effective, yeah.
I'll always take a view on how people do the job. So if you're working for us and you've got to get 100 people in a field to do football, like, I don't care about that bit. I want to know that you didn't put a gun to their head to get them in the field. You inspired and motivated them to be in the field. And that's where we are. That's my view, is like, how did we do what we did? You know, how did you do it? And that I have to be responsible for that bit.
Last question for me, Steve. It's one we always ask, is just a bit of reflection. If you could go back in time and speak to yourself when you're starting out in your career, what piece of advice, maybe when you were leaving college or starting uni, whatever it be, what piece of advice would you give yourself based on your experience?
You know what it'd probably be? It'd probably be something like, you'll end up where you deserve to be. It would probably been that. Like, I had no plan. And like, I think you can overthink it. I fell into coaching because of that placement, that 12-week placement. If I'd ended up in like an insurance company, like, I still would have ended up helping people. I'd end up where I deserve to be. I don't think I'd ever done a job where I wasn't necessarily satisfied to be there. It's that quote, like, things work out best for people who make the best out of the way things work out. Like, you're here, so make the best of it. And if I'm anything around our organisation, it's like, we don't want to talk about it, we've got to be about it. You have to, like, just do something, do it. Like, don't worry about if you're trying something that doesn't work out, you just got to do it. Like, no one's going to throw you under the bus. Who's going to eat your lunch for getting it wrong if your intent is right? So I suppose I would, you'll end up where you deserve to be, and like, don't stress it. Like, have some integrity with it. Like, I think I told him, like, I've got a 5-year-old and 11-year-old. Like, if it be anything, like, honestly, be a kind person and have kind people around you, and you'll end up somewhere good. Like, that'll get you somewhere. So don't stress it. But because of my experiences and like stuff like this, you do reflect on the Mr. Bells of this world. Like, everyone always remembers their favourite teacher. They can't remember what they taught them, but they know it was important. I think it's that, isn't it? So
love that. Thanks so much for your time. I know you're busy at the moment, and good luck with the opening of the building. And thanks for giving up so much time and insight for us.
I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.